Um, Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you had a very good lunch today. Welcome to CGM Climate Governance Malaysia's Roundtable Series 2025. This series is a collaborative platform bringing together policymakers, industry leaders, academics, and corporate players to crowdsource practical policy recommendations for Malaysia's climate transition. CGM has first held the Roundtable Series in 2022, and it proved successful in moving the agenda forward. In 2025, we are running 19 sessions across 6 themes in the month of October. So 1 is biodiversity, 2, agriculture, 3, energy and resource transition, 4, finance, 5, built environment, 6, community engagement. First, on behalf of CGM, I'd like to thank our partners and our subject matter experts who is leading all the sessions. And special thanks goes to PwC Malaysia, who is supporting in capturing outputs and translating into action. Let me introduce our session this afternoon. We are part of the community engagement theme entitled Post-Consumer Packaging and Extended Producer Responsibility EPR Session 2. Session 1 was held on Monday, which addressed how to develop an industry-friendly EPR model. So this EPR sessions for packaging has been curated by Darshini of MAREA and myself. And our topic this afternoon is a holistic supply chain approach towards transparency and reliability in EPR data. To unlock a wider supply chain approach to EPR activities, reporting and data management are critical towards meeting recycling targets and moving towards a collective ambition of designing, distributing, and collecting packaging materials for recycling. So some key discussion points we are covering later is responsibilities of converters, raw material suppliers, fillers, machine and packaging manufacturers. How shared responsibility enhances system resilience and traceability, aligning EPR data with ESG obligations. The role of and the opportunity for third-party auditors in ensuring transparency and preventing greenwashing. So my name is Pauline Goh. I'm your moderator today. I have more than 30 years of cross-industry experience, bringing global corporate insights and providing public-private sector influence. My career spans telecommunication, ESG, investment promotion, oil and gas, and blockchain, including roles at Alcatel-Lucent, MAREA, Malaysian Recycling Alliance, InvestKL, ConocoPhillips, and DARA, Digital Asset Rating Agency. Let me now briefly introduce our esteemed panelists of this afternoon. Number 1, Mr. Redha Shukor of PwC Malaysia. Redha is Sustainability and Operations Lead at PwC Consulting, where he supports corporate and government clients in embedding sustainability into strategy, operations, and supply chains. With degrees in management science and manufacturing engineering from the University of Warwick, he brings expertise in sustainability strategies, supply chain frameworks, and operational efficiency. Our panelist number 2 is Ms. Huangyi Chen of SIG Group. Huangyi is the Sustainability Manager for APEC South at SIG Group, with a decade of experience in chemicals and packaging. She has driven sustainable innovations, product launches, circular solutions, and industry partnerships, combining marketing expertise with a strong commitment to advancing packaging sustainability. Our panelist number 3 is Mr. Roberto Benetello of MAREA. Roberto is the CEO of MAREA, Malaysian Recycling Alliance, the country's first industry-led extended producer responsibility platform. A corporate sustainability expert with over 30 years international experience, he has held senior roles across Europe and Southeast Asia, and is also the founder and the board member of BCSD Malaysia, advancing circular economy and sustainability practices in the region. And our panelist number 4 is Ms. Gretchen Govoni of Petronas Chemical Group. Gretchen is the Chief Sustainability Officer at Petronas Chemical Group Berhad, leading the company's sustainability agenda, strategy, and programs. With a chemical engineering degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, she has held leadership roles at Takeda Pharmaceuticals, SABIC, and GE, spanning process operations, environmental compliance, corporate reporting, and climate strategy. Before we start, let me go through some housekeeping notes. For the panelists, we will keep strictly to time so that all voices can be heard and participants have the chance to engage. Each panelist will be given 5 to 7 minutes to present their points, followed by Q&A from me and the audience. Most importantly, the goal today is not only a discussion, but also to capture concrete, practical policy suggestions that can help shape Malaysia's climate governance agenda. And for the audience, Q&A is open throughout the session. Please use the Q&A box. At the end of the session, Zoom survey will be popped up, and please share your feedback. Now, let us start. Let me pass the mic to Mr. Redha Shukor, PwC. Over to you, Redha.
Thank you very much, Pauline, and good afternoon to everybody. First and foremost, thank you to Climate Governance Malaysia, MAREA, and also the organizing committee, and not to forget to our expert moderator, Pauline. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to be on this panel and to have a couple of minutes to share some views on this very important topic. Over the next few minutes, I intend to provide some color to what a holistic supply chain approach towards a transparent and more reliable EPR data would look like. And we certainly briefly look into some of its impact, its consideration. But to kick it off, I think we'll briefly touch on what EPR is, just as a quick refresher, and also its context in packaging, and it's important for us to all to be on the same page. As we get the slides up, just bear with me for a minute. Just to look at the basics as what I mentioned, the extended producer responsibility EPR, it essentially makes companies more accountable for the packaging that they place in the market. It is an environmental policy approach under which producers are made responsible for the products and of life management. Now, there are regulatory shifts, of course, that shifts the end of life burden of packaging waste away from municipalities and towards the producers, creating a new cost obligation to fund recycling system and requirements to design recyclable products. Now, it is certainly a challenging landscape and very complex landscape to navigate, especially with varying legislative requirements across different markets, SKU level data requirements, and also divergent infrastructure realities. So there are certain considerations for one to manage in this very complex environment. Next slide. Right. So when it comes to packaging, of course, EPR will have its implication to different types of packaging, whether it's from the primary packaging that essentially the consumers will have access to, or even the secondary packaging or the tertiary packaging, which typically impacts the logistics side of things. When we look at the importance or the key features of EPR in relation to packaging, I think there are 4 main areas that needs to be discussed, and we'll certainly touch upon many of these areas in the next few minutes. First and foremost are the roles and responsibilities of the different players across the value chain. How will the roles and responsibility be clarified, and also to ensure that there's a clear handoff in terms of the activities and accountabilities? How will targets be set? Is it going to be something that is agreeable across the value chain, and is it equitable for one to manage the different targets throughout the life cycle of a product? Reporting, of course, is something that we're going to be touching on in more detail. Producers are generally required to collect the data, but of course, there are a lot of challenges in this in terms of the consistency and also the effort to collect this data and the cost associated with that. And not to forget, in terms of satisfying the obligations of the organization and also the different stakeholders. So we'll look into some of this in a bit more detail. And what I also wanted to touch on is to highlight the challenges in managing this across the value chain. It requires some degree of balancing act. If you go into the next slide, it requires a very important degree of balancing act across managing the external factors and also the internal factors. Now, EPR creates a signal, a market signal that travels upstream. Brand owners demand recyclable formats and recycled resins, for example, and all of this needs to be managed very carefully as it will impact the various stakeholders. Now, managing the different considerations, let's start from the right-hand side where the external factor comes in. Regulations are constantly being updated and introduced, and it provides a very challenging landscape for businesses to navigate, especially when some of these legislations are different and depending on different markets. Consumer demands are certainly being enhanced as consumers are more sophisticated and they demand producers to be more responsible and as they themselves embark on a more sustainable journey individually. When we look at the economics and geopolitical position, I think this is where we can learn from, a few years back during the COVID epidemic, where many of the businesses, including some of you on the line, you may be familiar where you could not get the materials because there were not the right arrangements with your upstream suppliers. The technology developments are very, very important as well. Technology here doesn't necessarily mean from a software perspective, but is more on the innovation, considering R&D, considering innovation to replace packaging use, perhaps looking at other alternatives such as bioplastics. On the left-hand side, this is more from a business consideration, internal operational matters that impacts the business just as importantly. The business needs to fulfill their financial goals and also their sustainability targets. Not often easily achieved, and more often than not, many of our clients themselves find that there is a gap between these two and also to achieve these targets. The quality consideration is also very important. Once we talk about looking at alternatives, but we do need to bear in mind what the impact towards the quality and safety. For example, the packaging of fruits and food. It's not easy to say that we'll just replace it with recycled materials. Is it actually safe for consumers? So those are the kind of considerations. And of course, the capabilities internally to have a really good understanding of what the regulations are impacting different markets. And of course, looking at the relationship that one company has with its supply chain to really understand what is going to take to drive change moving forward. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that 4 columns in the middle there. Now, these are the levers of which the packaging industry can consider managing EPR. Now, we have prioritized it from left to right in terms of where it can provide the highest impact. Essentially, when it comes to rethinking, it's really talking about the innovation aspect of it. To use innovation to eliminate altogether in terms of some of this packaging. For example, a good case study is when Procter & Gamble introduced dissolving packaging options. Reducing, of course, is another popular and impactful lever as well. Using R&D again to make the products, make the packaging thinner, lighter, and of course, this can provide a better operational efficiency as well. We've seen in the market companies enjoying about a 10% gain when it comes to introducing these types of interventions, given the cost to transport from a CPG player to a retailer can reduce substantially. Last but not least, the focus on EPR, of course, is at the reuse and recycle perspective, which I think are the areas that are more familiar to many. On the next slide, I also wanted to highlight.
Sorry, Redha, you have 1 more minute, yeah?
Sure. what I'll do is we'll jump a couple of slides. Maybe if we can just highlight the last. Let's move down. Yeah, move down. Yes. What I wanted to highlight here is the pursuit of data and reporting within the value chain is a collective effort from various stakeholders. What you see here is just a snapshot of the different players within an organization to deliver the four different levers that I mentioned. And it is not a single function's responsibility. It is going to require the village, to make this change. And the intensity of the involvement of different groups, as you can see here, differs. Now, what's important is that every function plays a significant role, and early cross-collaboration efforts and also senior buy-in is going to be important to drive many of these topics. What I would like to mention is that one important function is not actually demonstrated here, which is actually the technology or the IT side of things. They are going to be the custodian of the data, and of course, given the complexity in recording and reporting in these areas, IT will play a big role to facilitate the transfer of information and data. Last but not least, I think we would also like to leave you guys with some considerations and ideas when it comes to embarking on this journey. These are the four phases that we wanted to share, covering from the scope, really understanding what is the coverage, understanding what is the regulatory requirements impacting different markets, to designing. Then this is where essentially using the data points that you have, and understanding what kind of SKU level information that is required to satisfy the different jurisdiction that you operate in, and to assess internal capacity in delivering those data points. On the implementation side perspective, this is essentially leveraging on your sales and packaging data to model the potential EPR considerations such as fees by jurisdiction. And last but not least, in terms of operationalizing it itself, this is not a one-time fix. It's not going to happen overnight. It is very important that the pursuit of this is considered as a journey where you leverage technology such as AI to help inform and facilitate better ease of reporting and collection of data. But equally important is also the engagement with the various stakeholders within the different jurisdiction or market. As you saw just now, there are different players and actors involved in the entire value chain, and we need to ensure that whatever legislation that is being introduced provides an equitable and fair and also efficient method of collecting and sharing any cost associated with EPR. Pauline?
Thanks a lot, Redha. Thank you so much for the extensive coverage of the whole EPR framework. So let's move on to our panelist number 2, Ms. Huangyi Chen of SIG Group. Over to you, Huangyi.
Okay, I hope everybody can hear me. Good afternoon. I'm Huangyi, the Sustainability Manager from SIG, covering APAC South, which means Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea. Let me share my screen. Right, so SIG is the leading provider of innovative packaging solutions, including fillers and packaging, providing a unique portfolio, including cartons, pouches, and bag-in-boxes. Now, circularity has been the favorite buzzword in the sustainability space because it has the potential to truly address a multitude of environmental challenges we face on a global scale, such as climate change, biodiversity loss, resource scarcity, and many more. Thus, governments are aligned in not only net zero greenhouse gas emission goals, but also in moving towards a zero waste future. So that's why governments in our region and around the world are establishing legislation around sustainability and implementing extended producer responsibility schemes to bring the private sector into the fight to reduce waste, prevent pollution, and promote circular economy. Now, SIG has been active in getting in front of these legislations by joining the various producer responsibility organizations in the region and providing science-based inputs to better inform the various governmental bodies and associations tasking with overseeing or drafting the EPR in order to optimize the EPR and incorporate eco-modulation to create the right incentivizing system to accelerate circularity. Means we need to have a high level of data transparency and accountability for each actor in the value chain. For brand owners, there are multiple challenges in adapting to a new EPR system. Today, I'll only highlight two. The first is regulatory complexity. This has been an issue we have seen from new EPR scheme implementations. Brand owners are confused on what exactly are their obligations. Perhaps different guidance or regulations are released at different points of time. And this means that brand owners may have some difficulties in capturing all the different nuances of what exactly they need to do. So for a successful rollout, we must release a final version with full details available and one central source for information dissemination. Clarity is key. And this leads us to the second challenge of data reporting. If the questions are not framed precisely, different brand owners may have different interpretation of what they need to fill in. Units, for example, are often neglected, but a very important element to think about. And also the level of detail required is another key consideration. Speaking as the converters, the role that we have to play really lies in the design of the packaging and raw material sourcing. For raw material sourcing, it is important that we source responsibly with sustainability in mind. This is why all of SIG's cartons are 100% FSC and ASI certified. All of our forest-based polymers and circular polymers are ISCC plus mass balance certified as well. This adds credibility and transparency to data reporting. In terms of designing for sustainability and circularity, SIG has been pioneering the change with the launch of our first aluminum-free aseptic carton in 2010, well over a decade ago. Today, our ambition drives us to set higher targets in the short and long term. At SIG, we invite you to reimagine the future and rethink what you know about the real impact in packaging. We believe in the 90% paper vision and increasing the share of paper in our carton packs to 90% by 2030. We believe also in reducing our carbon footprint per pack by up to 25% by removing the aluminum layer and thus simplifying the structure to two main materials. We believe in replacing virgin fossil-based polymers with renewable or recycled alternatives, so we eventually end up with 100% renewable pack. And specifically designed to meet EPR regulations, we have our SIG Terra circular polymer solution that is ISCC plus mass balance certified. And we also have our Terra alu-free full barrier solution without the aluminum layer that reduces carbon footprint while enabling recycling. All of this while upholding the full protective properties of our cartons, bag-in-boxes, and spouted pouch. So you can rest assured that your nutritional content will not be compromised, as we are also balancing the importance of designing for recyclability. Now, beyond our obligations on responsible sourcing and sustainable design, we have also several initiatives on the ground in the region. In the interest of time, I shall only highlight four. Now, we have what I like to call Recycle for Good Indonesia, our ecosystem for circularity. This not only encourages recycling by changing consumer behavior, but it also reaches out to the community via education, via incentives, little rewards to get them to really participate in recycling, not just used beverage cartons, but also flexible plastics and other recyclable materials. In 2024, there has been over 150 locations where we've collected well over 50 tons of used beverage cartons and 18 tons of plastic recyclables. In Indonesia, we also have a recycled plastic pellet project with our partner, and we have recycled over 4,000 tons of used beverage cartons in that case. In South Korea, we have partnered with the Seoul City to raise awareness for used beverage carton recycling. Over 800 kindergartens participated, and we have collected the used beverage cartons and converting it into coloring books and toys for the children. So we're really trying to educate the kids and creating a more sustainable future, basically. And in Australia, we have started Kirby trial project, which is focusing on curbside collection. So again, really getting into the households and getting the end consumers familiar with the fact that these products have value and can be recycled.
Huangyi, you have 1 minute left.
This is my last slide.
Thanks.
Yes. So at SIG, we invite you to join us in our journey to create packaging for the better. Packaging that gives more to the people and the planet that it takes out. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Huangyi. Yeah, that is quite extensive coverage, yeah, on your used beverage carton, yeah, and a lot of improvement that you have, SIG has done, yeah, for the packaging. Now, let's move to our third panelist, Mr. Roberto Benetello of MAREA. Over to you, Roberto.
Dear Pauline, thank you very much for having me this afternoon. Good afternoon to my fellow panelists and the audience. So yes, thank you for the generous presentation. My name is Roberto Benetello. I work for the Malaysian Recycling Alliance. So our organization is set up as a non-profit company limited by guarantee. We set up 5 years ago, approximately, by a group of pioneers, a group of of industry leaders, large companies in the fast-moving consumer goods sector, who know that EPR is coming everywhere as a policy, and they wanted to start sooner rather than later. So basically, what we're doing is we are doing EPR on a voluntary basis in Malaysia, okay? And MAREA should be considered a producer responsibility organization. So let's go back to what Redha said, and let's go a little bit into the details of that. So EPR is a policy framework, okay, that different companies in different governments in different jurisdictions around the world are adopting. It started in Europe like 25 years ago, and now it's becoming commonplace everywhere else in the world. So when the government of a country introduces EPR as a mandatory policy, the companies, so the obligated companies, need to comply with certain requirements. So I think it's worthwhile looking into the practical things that obligated companies need to do within a mandatory EPR system. So when EPR becomes mandatory in Malaysia, the obligated companies, so companies, for example, that put some packaging into the market, into the Malaysian market, over a certain quantity, need to recover a target percentage of their packaging footprint. For example, if you put into the market 100 tons of plastics, okay, you will be expected to recover initially 40, then 50, then 60, then 70% of that packaging footprint, okay? So this is a big undertaking because companies will have different possibilities to do that. But at the end of the year, companies need to demonstrate with documental evidence that they have achieved that recovery rate. They have recovered 50, 40, 50, 60, 70% of their packaging footprint. So this is very, very important. Currently, we are in this voluntary EPR phase, and we will be in this phase probably for another 3 to 4 years, okay? Because the legislation is expected to become mandatory and finalized by probably 2029, 2030, okay? But after that, all companies that are deemed to be obligated will need to participate. So there's going to be an obligation for all these companies to do that. So what we are doing as the only voluntary producer responsibility organization in Malaysia over the last few years is try to understand how EPR will work in Malaysia. It's very, very important to understand that, because it's impossible to take, for example, EPR from any other country around the world and replicate the same thing into the Malaysian market, because there are some very specific things that happen here that will not allow you to do this direct replication. So, for example, we need to understand what we need to do to educate consumers. So we call this CEPA, Communication, Education, and Public Awareness. How can we educate consumers in separating the different packaging materials at source, for example? Then we need to understand how to do the collection of these materials, okay? And as much as possible, we need to be efficient in collecting. This means that we need to integrate as much as possible with the current waste management infrastructure. So it doesn't make sense, for example, that we reinvent the wheel, we reinvent ways of collecting materials if there's somebody else already doing that. So it must be, we must find a way to integrate EPR, for example, with the current waste management system and with also both the formal and informal collection system. So we need to become better at sorting, so dividing different streams of materials, because eventually these streams of materials need to go to recyclers, and recyclers need to deal with these streams of material in a way that eventually they produce for example, recycled PET or recycled HDPE or recycled PE, which basically is a secondary raw material that can actually go back into the production. So we limit the usage eventually of virgin materials. So in order to do this, there's a lot of experimentation that we currently are doing. MAREA has a number of different projects all across Peninsular Malaysia, including Sabah and Sarawak. We are testing different collection methods. We are working with concessionaires. Probably some of you know that in Malaysia, waste management for municipal waste is given in concession to some entities, some private entities called concessionaires. So we are collaborating with them. We are collaborating with private collectors, and we're trying to find out what needs to happen so there is a shift in the mindset of people, that they start collecting for recycling. So this is the primary activity of MAREA. So going back a second to the main topic of today, auditing and data is extremely important in EPR, because there are many different steps that require data collection and data verification and data auditing. For example, we need to know if a company is registered or if an obligated company is registered. So there has to be a repository registry where all these companies are present, for example, and this needs to be consulted, needs to be verified by the government. We need to understand what is the number of metric tons of packaging materials that each company put on the market, and this information needs to be verified and audited, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure that
Roberto, you have 1 more minute left.
And I'm sure that with the next questions, we will be able to clarify some of these issues. But yeah, I will stop here for now.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Roberto, for sharing about MAREA, what's MAREA have been doing, and and the importance, right, that you are about to touch on data and reporting. So let's move on to our final panelists today, Miss Gretchen Govoni of Petronas Chemical Group. Over to you, Gretchen.
Hi, thanks so much, Pauline. Let me, there we go. Okay, great. I wanted to thank you so much for this opportunity to participate in this very important panel and for organizing this, Pauline. I'll be walking through how PCG is looking at circularity and where it fits into our organization around sustainability in PCG, and to give you an idea, how we're organized. So PCG is a leading integrated chemicals player, of course, in the region. We're the largest gas producing chemical operator in Southeast Asia, and most of our plants for the commodities business are around in Malaysia region, but we've been expanding into specialty chemicals. So you can see on the graphic on the left that we're becoming a global company and expanding beyond our base. So our three major segments are olefins, which we're talking about today, and derivatives. Also a significant presence in fertilizer and methanol. And then our specialty chems business, which is focusing down the value chain towards specialty chemicals. Our overall production capacity, almost 17 million tons per year. A good bit of that in Malaysia, but as we've been expanding our business over the last number of years, we market throughout Southeast Asia, and then our specialty chem business is beyond. So how we're approaching this is, we're driving sustainability to focus on business value. So how do we create value? And so we believe that sustainability does bring business value. Some of that comes through responsible governance. Also, we're working towards achieving climate net zero to fit the Malaysian requirements, and because it's the right thing to do for the climate. Also focusing on protecting nature and ensuring a just transition. So our approach for sustainability value creation has three different aspects. Climate, delivering towards net zero, the thriving with nature, fostering a just transition. Sustainability is really embedded across our organization and is at the core of what we do. So we have three different aspects: the environmental side that includes the carbon, environmental stewardship, biodiversity; the economic side focused on business sustenance and green initiatives; and also the social side, all underpinned by our governance. We also support 13 of the Sustainable Development Goals, and we take transparency very seriously. And so with our reporting and transparency, we're well along towards meeting Malaysia's reporting requirements that are connected with IFRS S1 and S2. And we score quite well on some of the external indices, such as FTSE for Good and the S&P Dow Jones indices, both of which were in the top regions. So we've really we've outlined 5 different approaches as we're looking towards a purposeful circular economy program and what that means for a business such as PCG. So first, we're focusing on waste to products. how do we take the end-of-life waste from our processes or other processes, and how do we change that then into creating new products, new revenue lines, and a new use for those materials? Circular carbon is important, and the closed loop systems. We've got a quite a high rate of reducing, reusing, recycling, removing the wastes from our processes. Repurpose and reuse is another aspect. Looking at the life cycle of our materials and where materials might be repurposed and reused, and how can we enable, and also on sharing models, optimizing of resources, shared programs, and of course we're always is a material supplier looking on reducing waste and cost efficiency. So in our PCG sustainability product portfolio, we really look at 3 aspects for our products. One is low carbon solutions. Another is the bio-based chemicals. And the discussion today on our circular economy approach is our circular economy solutions. So the circular economy approach includes 4 different aspects: the infrastructure, how do we innovate new products, new partnerships and connections to enable, and also giving back and helping, similar to others who talked about the education, the cleanup, and helping build awareness within the community. So as we're driving this, and circular economy is one of our 3 most complex, challenging areas within the sustainability group. So we reorganized recently into 3 high priorities. First, of course, is climate. Working towards net zero goals in a hard to abate industry. So that's our probably our number 1 challenge and priority. As I said, reporting and transparency is very important, and so we have a task force around that, and also circularity. So the magic of these task forces is I manage a relatively small group within PCG, but any of these very complex topics takes a very large network of stakeholders within the company to execute. And so each of these task forces has somewhere around 10, 12 people involved, but they come from different functions, from finance, commercial, technology, strategy, et cetera. And so we've got all of the people there that are involved in those specific topics to help drive. So we have the voice of of each of the stakeholders, similar to this session today. So we've been working towards figuring out what our approach should be and how we can impact building a circular plastic economy within Malaysia.
Gretchen, sorry, you have 1 minute left.
Sure, no problem. Left side. But the circle requires collaboration across each of these pieces. I think that's been a theme that we've all been talking about, but absolutely all the players across the circle need to build an ecosystem so that we can each be successful in bringing materials, including plastics, into a circular mode for Malaysia. And
All right. Thank you so much, Gretchen. Okay, so let's move on. Thank you so much, the 4 panelists, to share all your thoughts on this topic. And now let's move on to the Q&A. So let me start with our first speaker, Redha. What role would third-party auditors play in ensuring transparency and preventing greenwashing with EPR reporting? Over to you, Redha.
Thanks, Pauline. I mean, that's a great question, right? Yes, the pursuit of getting comfortable and assurance in this disclosures is certainly something that we're seeing grow in all parts of sustainability disclosures. And I think this is going to be no different for EPR reporting as well. Third-party assurance, it's what going to turn the EPR data into investor-grade information. Now, we've seen some of the surveys and research that we've done through our network. The latest US EPR brief shows that packaging EPR is definitely moving into the SKU level reporting, whether it's about weight, material, the PCR content, recyclability, even layering in the eco-modulated fees, which is tied to the design choices. So in the US, you already have different states enacting different type of legislation in this, making it very challenging when it comes to comparability and the credibility of this information. And it really hinges on independent verification of the input, the type of metrics like mass balances, and across the different SKUs and jurisdiction. So where assurance is really explicitly required, I think this is where there needs to be an improvement in discipline in capturing some of this data. We've seen closer to our shores in Philippines, for example, there's a study that was done where producers must appoint an independent auditor to meet the rising plastic recovery targets each year. I think they started out to what Roberto mentioned, whilst we are exploring something around the 30-40%. For Philippines, they started at in 2023 with 20%, increasing to 80% in 5 years, right? So this is where the auditors are required to really help validate the information and essentially deploy a massive capacity to get this done, because it's a problem that everyone's facing. So the third-party auditors themselves are required to sort of familiarize and also upskill themselves with the necessary methodology standards, as well as the most efficient way to capture and verify this information, which, if you look at sustainability reporting in general, is still a pursuit that is being explored or endeavored by many third-party auditors as well.
Redha, thank you so much. Is PwC a third-party auditor for any of the countries in Asia Pac so far? Because a few countries has already mandated, right, EPR?
Yes, we do. PwC do provide services when it comes to providing assurances on sustainability-related metrics and disclosure. What we're seeing in the market is, in terms of our experience in Southeast Asian region, certainly on top of looking at the overall sustainability disclosure, some companies, they get assurances for specific metrics or disclosure items rather than the whole piece. And the reason for that is simple. The readiness. It is not easy for organizations to collect the data in the first place, and it's going to take a lot of effort for third-party auditors to verify. And if the data is not ready, there's no point really to get it assured. So so this is about the readiness of the market and our clients to have the right level of comfort in their own methodology and in capturing the data. And that's where auditors or third-party auditors comes in to selectively verify this. But as legislation enhances and increases, capacity on our side or the third-party auditor side is going to be ramped up quite significantly as well, because to what Roberto mentioned, when this becomes a policy, it's mandatory and everybody needs to be ready for this.
All right, thank you so much, Redha. Let's move on to our panelist number 2, Huangyi. How does SIG Group ensure that design for recycling principles are embedded in packaging solution? And how do you see EPR frameworks reinforcing this? Over to you, Huangyi.
Thank you. Sustainability is truly at the heart of everything we do. And as you've heard from my presentation, we have rather ambitious goals for our packaging to reach 90% paper content by 2030 and 100% renewable carton in the future. So in our flexible plastic packaging, our pouches and boxes also have our SIG Terra range of Rec Shield recycle-ready solutions. And in fact, we have commercialized our Rec Shield solutions designed for recycling in Australia already in this region. And by publishing eco-design guidelines and eco-modulation to better incentivize brand owners to move towards more sustainable packaging, we can absolutely accelerate adoption and commercialization of these sustainable packaging innovations. For example, in South Korea, the government there incentivizes recycled content inclusion by reducing the brand owner's recycling obligation if the PCR content in their packaging reaches more than 10%. So this is definitely something that can be adopted here too. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Huangyi. Now let's move on to Roberto. As the CEO of MAREA, what expertise has MAREA gained in developing reporting and auditing mechanism to verify the EPR claims provided to your members? Roberto?
Yes, Pauline. Okay, so we started a couple of years ago with projects, specific projects around Malaysia, collecting recyclables. So last year, we collected 3,000 metric tons. This year, we are collecting 4,000. And please remember that we are still on this voluntary EPR. When we move to mandatory EPR, the order of magnitude will change dramatically. I mean, we're not talking about a few thousands. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of metric tons of plastics that need to be recovered. Okay, so we're talking about a completely different order of magnitude, and also this is going to be an important economic factor, an important cost for companies as well, because companies will have to bear this cost, but at the same time make sure that the cost is not passed on to the consumer. Okay, so this is important. The other thing that is important to mention that in Malaysia, the government wants to have this industry-friendly EPR system, and we are totally 100% aligned with that. So basically, the government will have an oversight role, but the industry will have to organize itself through PROs, producer responsibility organizations. MAREA will definitely be one of them, but there will be more producer responsibility organizations that will collect these materials on behalf of the members. So in this experimenting over the last couple of years, it's been some audit-related issues have become really apparent, and they are really, really important. For example, the company registration or the PRO registration or the packaging footprint submission, I mentioned that earlier. These are all elements that are extremely important for a well-functioning EPR system. So we need to be able to collect this data, and we need to be able to have this data to be 100% reliable. Okay. We need also to have a system to take through the recyclers and the actors in the value chain through some sort of due diligence system. So we need to know how they operate, who they are, the kind of sustainability and quality standards they adopt, and so on and so forth. So in this direction, MAREA has developed a system to actually do that. Some of it alone by ourselves, and some of it with the help of some professionals. We need to develop EPR compliance report. So we need to, at the end of the year, as I said to you before, the companies need to demonstrate they have complied. So we're currently working with the government of Malaysia, and specifically with the ministry KPKT, to develop this compliance report. So to make sure that the information about the compliance of the different companies are recorded in a professional manner and in a reliable manner. The other issue that, in my point of view, is very important is to verify some of the claims in terms of percentage of recycled content into packaging. So in order to close the loop of circularity, all these secondary raw materials will have to be used by new packaging, and they will have to be integrated into the new packaging. So all this percentage of recycled content into packaging will have to be verified and audited together with the other claims that the companies will be making. So in our day-to-day projects, we have gained quite a lot of experience in addressing post-consumer waste and making sure that, for example, the waste comes from Malaysia, which is another very, very important requirement. So we need to make sure that EPR is about waste that is collected in Malaysia. And the other important point is that it's post-consumer packaging. So these are all very, very important elements that need to be, information needs to be acquired, verified, and audited in order to make sure that the system works properly.
Okay, thank you so much, Roberto. Yes, yeah, audit and verification is indeed very important. Okay, now let me go back to our panelist one. Sorry, let me go to our panelist number 4, Gretchen. What policies would be necessary to facilitate the role of raw material suppliers in providing data transparency on resin types, recycled content, and product traceability towards supporting EPR compliance? Gretchen, over to you.
Thanks, Pauline. Certainly won't go into any details in just a minute or two, but wanted to go over some concepts. It costs a great deal in time and complexity for raw material suppliers to comply. So as we're considering rolling this out, it would be helpful if there were tax breaks or procurement preferences or label advantages, some incentives for the increase in cost and complexity. Certainly encouraging industry collaboration and cross-regional interoperability is very important to make this easy, consistent, and low cost. As we get data systems sharing across the supply chain, data confidentiality and IP protection can become very important. And so we need to make sure that there's secure data protocols, and more trust will lead to greater participation. So as we're going towards the material disclosure regulations, we definitely need to align overall globally. First, we need to try to make the disclosures as simple as possible and fit for purpose, of course. But we can align with the Global Plastics Treaty kind of harmonized standards. We should certainly consider the WBCSD partnership for carbon transparency and their circularity data exchange, so that we're aligning with the global standards that are winning in the marketplace. And so really the overall goal is around getting product level material data and emissions data to be exchanged across the value chain with the lowest cost and complexity possible. Back to you, Pauline.
All right. Thank you so much, Gretchen. Okay, we have another round, but please keep your response sweet and short. Okay, every panelist, you have 1 to 2 minutes maximum to answer to these questions. Okay, let me go back to Redha. Based on your experience with ESG reporting, what are the key challenges in aligning EPR data with broader corporate sustainability disclosures? Redha, over to you.
I think it's pretty much what's highlighted just now as well. You know, the granularity gap, you know, in terms of looking at the SKU level data, which is not easy to do in the first place, but it's also to recognize that there are different standards and different requirements in different jurisdictions. So the scope of that needs to be certainly something that is tackled first and foremost, and also to the point about managing this equitably and if cost efficient way to do this as well. we don't want the pursuit of capturing this information become too burdensome for all parties or for any single party for that matter. At the same time, is also to ensure that the whole overall concept of EPR needs to be something that is not going to be detrimental to the environment as well, especially when you think about reverse logistics and recycling efforts. So I would think that those are some of the key gaps that we see when it comes to reporting and also EPR in general.
All right, thanks a lot, Redha. Now, Huangyi, what are the specific challenges do converters face in providing reliable packaging data to downstream partners under an EPR system?
Yes, so I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but when it comes to packaging, and I think Gretchen also spoke to a little bit towards the end, we all have our secret recipes. So we understand that we need to disclose to the government or the regulatory authorities, our raw materials and the percentages, but this information has to be protected. So a sufficient safeguard must be, in place in order for this to happen. So in some other countries where we've seen them circumventing this issue would be to reward converters with a recycling label, which then can be used by the brand owners, or the system can be, fed directly through the back end to when the brand owners are inputting their specific SKU-based data. But all of this does increase the complexity of the system design. So there needs to be a very, capable IT infrastructure backing all of this up. And so it's definitely tricky balance.
Right, thanks, Huangyi. Okay, now let's move on to Roberto. How has MAREA adopted best practice principles by facilitating dynamic relationships between actors in the recycling supply chain to ensure credibility in the EPR data? Yeah, over to you, Roberto.
Thanks, Pauline, and I'll try to be fast. So for us, it's been extremely important to have experience on the ground. So the projects that we are doing in Malaysia have really and are really helping us understand exactly how EPR should be developed and implemented in this country. Equally, it's been very important for us to engage directly some other EPR operators or PROs in other jurisdictions around either Southeast Asia, but also in Europe. In this context, it has been really, really important for us to collaborate with a company, with an association called GIZ. GIZ funded some of the consulting that we had from very, very big, important experts, worldwide experts. So these experts have really passed on to MAREA some very important information. But it was also important for us to understand what needs to be done and what are the mistakes that need to be really, really avoided. For example, when talking about auditing, some very important examples come from Germany, where audit guidelines increased the transparency dramatically. And registered producers, for example, grew from 60,000 to 200,000 because of the implementation of these audit guidelines. If we look at the Philippines, the EPR system in the Philippines relies heavily on audit. So third-party verification ensure reliable waste diversion certificates, and these certificates in the Philippines are reliable. On the other side, on the don'ts, we have examples, for example, from India, where the absence of auditing guidelines led to fake recycling certificates. So, making fake recycling claims is really bad, and that's exactly what we don't have to do. Also in the UK, inconsistent reporting inflated recycling rates without proper audits. One of the big risks we have, and I finish here, is double counting. So counting materials multiple times. So you can imagine that if we do that in a system which is non-transparent and non-reliable, we eventually end up with fake recycling rates and unreliable information. And I'll stop here and hand over to you, Pauline.
Yeah, thanks, Roberto. I'm sure blockchain and AI can help us to overcome that, right? Technically. Okay, now let's
Definitely.
move. Let's move on to Gretchen. What are the opportunities that exist for upstream innovation, such as chemical recycling, to strengthen EPR compliance in Malaysia? And how can this be accelerated during the voluntary or interim period of this policy? Gretchen, do share with us a bit on your initiative, right, in chemical recycling. Over to you, Gretchen.
Yeah, sure. We need to certainly do the easiest, recycle first. So mechanical recycle, right? But chemical recycle is a way of being able to take the end-of-life plastics back into use at higher end applications. It is complex and energy intensive. So many of these processes require multiple stages, and they can be energy intensive. So as we're developing the policies, certainly we should support green procurement incentives, perhaps tax subsidies, certainly some encouragement of public-private partners and infrastructure, and lining up on the infrastructure for the separation and the chemical recycle. Certainly we need to make this easier, and lowest priced and risk overall. Some of the upstream steps that can be done is design for recycle. Trying to keep same resins together is helpful. And also the elimination or reduction of certain chemicals of concern. Some of the inks, resins, et cetera, have substances in them that can harm our downstream processing units that would not allow the chemical recycle. And certainly the better the segregation is and the larger volumes of the concentrated end-of-life plastics that would go towards chemical recycle would help, so we could build larger and more efficient units. So looking forward to simple but effective regulation and policy to help this move forward. Thanks,
All
Pauline.
right. Thank you so much. Yeah, Gretchen. Yeah, we'll convey to KPKT. All right. So thank you so much, the four panelists. There's quite a few questions in our Q&A box. Let me pick up a few to address, because we really need to have a hard stop by 2:15. Yeah. So now question number one: can EPR really be effective in helping manage waste as a whole if food manufacturers are only focused on packaging waste and not the contents of the packaging? Anyone wants to take this question? Roberto, maybe you want to take this?
Well, I don't understand the question very
So
well.
the question
anyway,
is about, why are we talking about packaging here, recycling, and we are not, we are addressing FMCG sector. Why are we not talking about the food waste?
Well, I mean, food waste needs to be tackled. It's another problem, and there are initiatives right now that are looking into collecting food waste for composting, for example, and all the rest. But we need to solve one problem at a time. Here we're talking about EPR, and EPR focuses on post-consumer packaging, for example, in the case of fast-moving consumer goods. And that's what we need to deal with. The problem that we have with, for example, food waste is the contamination. So a lot of packaging, a lot of plastic packaging, for example, is contaminated with food, and this prevents that to be recycled. So part of the SEPA activities, communication, education, public awareness, is to tell consumers that they need to wash some of the packaging, some of the containers before they segregate, before they separate it. And that would really help a lot with the recycling process.
All right, thanks a lot, Roberto. So the next question, I think there are, shouldn't reusability be prioritized over recyclability? Doesn't recycling also have very high total carbon footprint as compared for reusing? Redha, you want to take this question?
Yep, I was actually typing my response actually. So you beat
Exactly.
me
That's
to
why
it.
I was seeing that. Yeah, you must as well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, earlier I actually had a slide to show the value chain and the different how it acts, sorry, how it intersect with the different levers. And in that priority, reusability is definitely a lever that is prioritized over recycling, right? Not just from the logistics standpoint. Yes, the environmental impact of recycling needs to be factored in, and reusability is typically a more environmental friendly way in managing the four levers. But that's where I think some of the challenges is in terms of actually deploying the levers based on how mature the market is, because you got to look at it from a national perspective. You know how mature is a different ecosystem to facilitate not just the reusability perspective, but also the recyclability perspective. And not to mention, reusability is not just for the consumers, it's the producers themselves can double down on reusability as well as a important operational lever.
All right. All right. Thanks a lot, Redha. I think the two questions for MAREA has been addressed already by Roberto earlier about the tonnage they have done in the last 2 years, 3,000 and 4,000. So let's move on to the next question.
Sorry, Pauline, may I just
Yes.
add a little bit to the previous two questions?
Yes.
So on the food waste reduction, I absolutely agree that this is a very key challenge. And, you know, if we look into how much food is being wasted globally, it's one of the largest contributors to carbon footprint. So definitely this is why we cannot forget about the primary purpose of the packaging itself, which is to be able to protect the products being packed inside the food and beverages, and to extend the shelf life so that we can, you know, be able to enjoy the nutritious products for longer. So I think this is something that we definitely need to, you know, keep front of mind as we are moving towards designing for sustainability. And on the reuse portion, there's a lot of different industries that's not actually able to have that as an option because of, be it food safety concerns, be it the medical or pharmaceutical industry, which is not able to offer these options. So I think it, again, while it's fantastic, and I believe in reuse as one of the key options as moving us towards a more sustainable and zero waste future, but we also again need to consider all of the different purposes that packaging is being used for, and you know, how that actually takes into the consideration.
All right. Thanks, Huangyi. There's another question for MAREA. Can MAREA share how the industry can overcome cost coverage as a barrier to circularity? What will the fee structure be like? Whether there will be a prevention and reuse fee to boost repair, reuse, and refill solutions? Roberto?
Okay, so I can comment briefly about the refill solutions. I mean, refill solutions are being tested in different countries, in different jurisdictions with some success. I don't see a massive shift to refill solutions, to be honest with you, because they somehow affect the brand communication of the different products. So that needs to be taken into account. So the most pertinent comment I can make is on EPR fees, okay, because that's where I work. That's my area of expertise. So the system in Malaysia, it looks like that is going to be industry driven. So therefore, the companies will be given a target for the recovery of their packaging. For example, a company will be told you need to recover 50% of your packaging footprint, the packaging that you put on the market. At that time, that company will be able, either through its own means or using a PRO, to recover that material and pay the associated costs, okay? So PRO companies like MAREA will have a price list, and we will say, for example, that in order to recover a metric ton of PET, this amount of money will be required. Okay, so this is not going to be an amount of money, a fee, which is determined by the government. In other EPR systems, for example, around the world, for example, in Vietnam, the government is much more prescriptive, and the government indicates exactly what the EPR fee should be. And there are different examples that you can see in other jurisdictions, but it looks like in Malaysia it will be driven by private negotiations between different actors, and PRO organizations will probably publish their prices with some degree of flexibility based on the negotiation with the industry. The overall objective is to make this very efficient. So we want the industry to pay, first of all, to comply, because that's the most important thing, to pay as little as possible, and to create a secondary raw material market. We need to create a market for secondary products that can be put back into the system. So eventually we will use less fossil fuel, less virgin plastic to create new packaging materials.
All right, thank you so much. We need to wrap up. We are running out of time. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, my four esteemed panelists. So let me quickly summarize. Yeah, Redha. So yeah, we hear from you. Third-party auditing and validation is critical. Yeah, to make sure that yeah, there is no greenwashing, and using technology like AI is equally important. Huangyi, yeah, thanks a lot. Now that I know that even used beverage carton can be almost fully recycled, right? And unlike what we see in Malaysia today, most of the used beverage carton, yeah, we still have 25% polyol. So I hope that you can bring this new product also to Malaysia. Yeah. And Roberto, yes, wonderful, right, of what MAREA is doing. And it has actually done a lot, and including now incorporating also the data collection, yeah, and also auditing process in MAREA. And Gretchen, yes, so of course PCG is critical, yeah, for Malaysia, other than just providing chemical to us. We look forward, yeah, to having your chemical recycling plant hopefully ready for all of us soon. Like I said, that like you have mentioned, yeah, it's important to bring back the material to its original form to be reused, right? So this is the highest of class compared to the other type of recycling that we have today, yeah, the mechanical recycling. So thank you very much. So before I end, I invite each panelist to close with one key message. Yeah, make it short and sweet. Yeah, to our audience. So let's start with Redha.
Take it as a journey, and work within your means, and collaborate.
Thank you so much. Huangyi?
Yes, very similar message. Please join us on our journey to better packaging. Thank you, everybody.
Roberto?
Let me say that the MAREA members have really demonstrated the ambition of the industry to tackle EPR in a very concrete way, and put quite a bit of money over the last few years towards this project. I want to see that the policy and the legislation in Malaysia follows, and I want to see a very ambitious government to work together with the industry and eventually make EPR a reality in this country, because it will be a game changer.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Roberto. So audience, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you have some key takeaways. And now I'd like to remind the audience that there will be a Zoom survey. So we appreciate if you can provide your feedback. And also please stay tuned for more roundtable sessions happening throughout October. And there is just one shortly after this. Do join them. And if you want to know more about CGM, please look at our website, subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on LinkedIn, and also join our WhatsApp group. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Pauline. Thank you,
you.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.